authentic conversations about ourselves and our community, exploring topics that uplift and inspire us. From personal growth to social change. So grab your teacup and get ready to join the conversation.
Cross. So I don't know. I mean, it would be interesting to hear their side of the story if they're being accused of helping in this alleged racketeering and organized sexual crime company. It would be interesting to hear what they did. I know that one of them had released a statement stating that she's never aided in any crimes. So I think it would be important to hear their side of the story, because at the end of the day, you do have to prove that organized crime racketeering piece.
Got another question from Chris Bono that I think is great. I'll throw this to you, Ben. Would Cassandra Ventura need to give that money back for any reason? So again, she had that settlement with Sean Combs, now testifying against him. Would she have to give the money back for any reason?
I don't believe so, no.
Yeah, and Mina, you were shaking your head too. No.
And you know what? The fact that he gave that money in under 24 hours also speaks volumes, right?
Yeah, no, it's. Although I don't know, there are people who've said, and Ben, you go to this. There are people who settle for all different kinds of reasons, right? Ben, they don't just settle because they're guilty of what they're, or, liable for what they're being accused of, if we're talking in a civil sense. But they settle for other reasons. They don't want it to amplify. They don't want to go through litigation. Maybe they settle before a lawsuit's filed because they don't want it to go public. We can't just automatically take the settlement to mean that all of this is true, right, Ben? Or what do you think?
Yeah, completely right, Jesse, that people settle for all kinds of reasons to avoid stress, to avoid legal fees. But the quicker the settlement, as Mina pointed out, and the amount of the settlement do speak, the bigger the settlement, the worse it looks.
By the way, I have a question for you, Ben. He's got a massive legal team. Is that what you expected?
Yeah, that's what I would expect, although that can be an advantage and a disadvantage. Personally, I like a smaller team with everybody on the team knowing everything about the case. The problem when you have a big team, as you know, is that you'll have people who know little pieces of the. So it's just a question of preference. But yes, I would expect him to have a huge team.
Interesting. Okay, got a question for you, Mina. This is from Donnie Darko 99. No one's asking, why did she sign the 10-album contract, and why did Diddy didn't let her create more albums if that's what she signed to?
Well, Danny, that is a great point. And
Donnie Darko.
Donnie, thank you, Donnie. That's a great point. But I think the prosecution, if I'm right about this, they're going to point out that maybe because the music wasn't important to Diddy. At one point, Cassie did say, "This was my job, these freak offs." So I think the fact that she couldn't really actively participate in her music career because he controlled that, and then she had to participate in these other sexual activities. I think that's actually going to help the prosecution. But you're right, why sign her to this deal? She was also 19, And a lot of young artists sign deals that are not favorable to them. It's very important to have an attorney when you're signing a deal like that. And I don't know if Cassie had that present, but I'm not an attorney, but Ben, you are. I would never allow my client to sign a 10 album deal. I mean, like I said, even if you release the album every year, you would be under a contract for 10 years. That's ridiculous.
Ben would never let that happen, right, Ben?
No, no way.
You know, Mina, you say you're not a lawyer, but you know the law backwards and forwards as much as anybody else. Okay.
Let me say this though. I went to Syracuse University. I'm a new high school, television, radio, and film, and political science, Jesse. I was almost there. Almost.
And you're giving me a hard time about self-promoting sidebar. My gosh, Mina, what is going on here? No, I just messing. So, okay, here's something that's interesting from Janae Hall. Janae Hall for you, Ben. Will witness 3 be held in contempt if they don't show up, since they're saying they do not know where this witness is?
If the witness violates a subpoena or violates a court order, the judge could issue a capias, which is basically a summons for the witness's arrest. But that's only if there's been proper service or a court order. If the witness is simply missing, the witness is not necessarily in contempt.
But isn't the problem, Ben, even if they were to compel her to take the stand, that could affect her testimony and might not work for the prosecution's benefit. And they might say, we're cutting our losses. She's an issue.
Yeah, absolutely. If you've got a witness who is so reluctant that she's avoiding service, you probably don't want that witness, especially when you have the burden of proving guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. You don't want a loose witness there because it can be the subject of the closing arguments that Mina mentioned.
We got a question for you, Mina, from Moose Moose. How long does this case go for?
They're estimating 6 to 8 weeks, so 2 months tops, which I think is pretty fast considering other cases. I mean, Jesse, you and I covered Young Thug, and that went for over a year.
Don't use Young Thug as an example. That was insane. I mean, that shouldn't happen. But you know, it is interesting, Mina, when you think about it and the power of Cassandra Ventura's testimony. There are some attorneys I've spoken to who say, hey, it's great to get her out in first, right? Primacy, recency, one of the first witnesses they hear. Then again, 8 weeks later, that impact of her testimony might fade a bit. No, Mina?
Yeah, I agree. But we also don't know who's coming next, right?
Right.
And what their testimony is. So I think that the prosecution, it's hard to say because we're not in the courtroom. And that's some of the limitation with this particular case. You have to just kind of get it from word of mouth from other people. But yeah, I mean, it's hard to say how these next witnesses are gonna impact the jury and what their testimony is gonna be.
So we got a question for you, Ben, from Gossip Squirrel. Okay, that's great. Will we see Diddy speak at any point during the trial?
Great question. Probably the most critical question from Gossip Squirrel. My personal theory is that he's going to defy convention and testify. The rule, as you know, is that the defendant doesn't testify. I go back to the video. That's why I'm not sure it matters that it will have been a long time before Cassie has testified, because you know the prosecution is going to show that video again in closing argument. But if if I were the defense, I would think very strongly about putting him on. I think he's got to explain that. He's got to apologize for it. The problem is he's already apologized.
Yeah.
Okay, y'all didn't hear that. It was on mute, unfortunately. I said I'm still in the middle as far as where Diddy is with testifying. I still got to hear more of what it looks like for Diddy. Like right now, Cassie's just testified to, what their situationship was. It hasn't really been anything damaging quite yet, as far as like Diddy having to get up there and defend what was said with his own accounts and recollections of, what happened in his own words. So I'm going to give it some more time for me to see how I feel. Would it be tea for Diddy to get up there and spill? Yeah. So y'all let me know in the chat. What's y'all's tea on Diddy potentially testifying?
Yeah, he apologized, Ben, in that Instagram video, and that didn't go over well.
No, so he's going to face cross-examination out the wazoo, but I still think he's got to show some remorse so they don't think that he's such a monster as he appears to be in the video.
So we have a poll up on Law and Crime. We always put a bunch of polls up there in the course of this case. The question we asked is, who do you think won week one? 67% say the prosecution won week one. 33% say the defense won week one. You think that's a fair assessment of the week, Mina?
I think so. I've seen some contradiction online. I've seen, the comments kind of say, where's the crime? This seems like a domestic violence case, but they're getting to it. They've sprinkled in different elements, bringing in the escorts from a variety of places. I actually have it written down here: prostitutes from Miami, Las Vegas, LA, Ibiza. They've introduced the fact that, Diddy might have blackmailed her by saying, if you don't do this, I'm going to release these freak off videos of you. They've introduced the fact that when something's going wrong during the freak off, someone's getting baby oil, or, someone's orchestrating these things and supplying and kind of, it adds to that organized crime bit. So I think they've had some successes. I do think that it would be wise, to be honest, to put Diddy on the stand. I mean, if I was on this case, I'm not an attorney, but I would put him on. Just it would humanize him, and I think he'd be able to tell his story in his own words, and then help the jury really understand who he is. He's very charismatic. Um, you don't get to be a mogul by not being a people person. So painting him as this violent person, which he can be, but there's also another side of him where he's very good with people. You don't have multiple business, Sean John, Ciroc, you're representing liquor companies. You don't get to be this person without being a good people person. And I think it would be wise to let the jury see that.
I would say, look, it's his decision at the end of the day, and he's probably going to make a game time decision based on how I think they're doing in the case and whether it's necessary. I would get a question from Martina Masadas. Any insight into why Sean Combs' children were allowed in court during such sensitive testimony? Well, they're adults. They want to be there. They want to be there. It's their choice. I mean, it's probably not the most comfortable testimony to listen to about your father's sex life and what he's accused of doing, but they're there to support him. We get a question. We have an update from court. So yeah, this is Sean Combs' attorney, Anna Esteveo. I want to say we're going to finish with Cross faster than he thought, probably before the next break. Combs' other attorney, Mark Agnifilo, says, may I speak with the government for 1 minute? The judge says, bring the jury back. There was also something about Tenny Garagos on exhibits and redactions. Okay, we have a question here, Ben, from Soul Shadow. Do you think at some point we'll have psychological experts who can explain the mechanisms of psychological control in this type of relationship? And if you don't know the answer to this, Ben, I do, but you tell me if you want to answer this one.
If I were the prosecution, I would, but I turn to you for the actual answer.
So you're going to know this name. Dr. Dawn Hughes is going to be testifying. And she will not be allowed to testify about coercive control, but other certain dynamics of a relationship she will be able to testify to. And I know, Ben, she played a role in your trial.
Yes, she did. Yes, I think she had mixed results.
Yep. Well, that's going to be very interesting to see, because I guess, Mina, the question becomes, and this is the question, right? If you were abused, Cassandra Ventura, if you were trafficked, Cassandra Ventura, why didn't you go to the police? Why didn't you leave? Why did you, even though she said she didn't keep coming back, why did you stay with him? There are cases that our understanding of sexual abuse, and this is allegations here, they've changed over time, Mina, about why alleged victims do these things. And I was in the Harvey Weinstein trial, okay? I mean, I covered it the entire time. And that was the big point of analysis, is that if Weinstein did this to you, why did you stay in contact with him? You can be abused and do that. It's documented. So it becomes a very interesting and important conversation to have, Mina.
There's a psychology behind the abuse that is very important to explain in this particular trial and any trial involving sexual abuse and trafficking.
Absolutely. So again, we have a question from Legs7K. Ben, now Cassie has given evidence. Is there a possibility that there may be a male witness similar to witness 1? Now, witness 1 was the security guard, so I don't know if they were actually referring to witness 2, who is that male performer that allegedly was paid to have sex with Cassandra Ventura. But I imagine we're going to be hearing from probably more individuals in that line of work, Ben.
Yeah, I would think so.
Yep. We got a question from Ashley Glass. If the prosecution didn't think, I'll throw this to you, Ben. Ashley Glass, if the prosecution didn't think they could get him on these charges, why would they raid him and stuff? Like, I mean, it's a fair question, right? So we keep talking about, I've said this in the opening statement, it felt to me like the prosecution really was spending a lot of time trying to explain to the jury why this is a crime. Not if he committed a crime, why this is a crime. Racketeering, sex trafficking, complicated charges, right? But this is the Southern District of New York, Ben. These are one of the top prosecuting teams in the entire United States. They wouldn't have gone after him. Just why? Because they can't, there's no state charges he could be charged with, and they have to get him on something? No, they would go after him, I think, feeling like they have a strong case, right?
Absolutely. And they wouldn't do the raid. Of course, they have to get a judge to approve that. They wouldn't even try that unless they felt they had a very strong case.
We've got a question, Mina, from Janae Hall. Is it likely the defense will have any of his children testify on his behalf?
I wouldn't. As a parent, I wouldn't want to put my children anywhere near this. Keep them away. Don't open them up to this. Protect them. Right? I absolutely would not do that.
Well, if he's convicted and there's a sentencing hearing, I'm sure his children will make statements in some capacity in his side, for sure. I mean, that's something we can expect. You're right, Mina?
I do want to add that there's also things that are unsaid, right? His children being there, his mother being there. Those are all unsaid things. We support you. We believe you. I mean, a lot of the analysts and the reporters are, who's looking where, who's doing what. His daughters, when they were having very graphic testimony about the sexual nature of this trial, his daughters left. All of those things are being watched. The jury can see that. So there's a lot of things that are unsaid that you don't need to put your child on the stand to say.
Yeah, and by the way, it goes to another question, Ben. When you have a client, right, okay, whether it's a celebrity client or any kind of client, you have to coach them on how to behave in that courtroom at all times, because the jury's going to be watching. I imagine the jury looks over at your client 60% of the time, 70% of the time, to see maybe their reactions to everything. Am I wrong? I mean, you have to coach them about how they behave.
No, you're absolutely right. And every second you're in the courtroom, and it goes for the attorneys too, although people pay less attention to the attorneys. But if there's family there, and I agree with Mina, just having them there is great testimony, because it shows support. But the family also needs to be careful how they react. So everybody has to be schooled on how to behave in a courtroom and not to speak outside the courtroom, because you never know where a juror might be.
So keep the questions coming in. We're going to be talking for a little bit longer. We got another question from Chris Buono. Has the witness list been released? If not, why? No, I believe it's sealed. And that would make sense in a case like this when you're talking not only about, first of all, you have alleged victims who are testifying under pseudonyms. It gives you the idea of the sensitivity of these charges. And you want to make sure that nothing impacts this trial, that none of their identities are revealed that could compromise their testimony in any way. Mina, this is a case where Combs himself has been accused of trying to improperly contact witnesses in this case. So having the witness list sealed in a criminal case like this, not surprising, right?
Right. And also their safety, right? I mean, they're painting this man to be someone that will blow up your car, right? So it's like people might be concerned about their safety. And that's why they wouldn't release the list.
Yeah, we have a question. Ooh, this is an interesting one. Who do I give this to? I'll start with you, Ben. This is from Bird. Is it likely this is a trial by social media?
I don't think so. I mean, there's certainly a lot of social media attention and attention to your show, but I think the jurors will base their decision on the evidence they hear.
You would hope so, but obviously, look, Ben, your trial was the most watched trial, I think, of all time. And everybody had an opinion. Everybody was making videos. Their courtroom, you know, people were making videos outside the courthouse. You don't want to have an effect on the jury, but it does become a difficult question.
Yeah, it does. And I could see the concern about it, but again, you know, hopefully, as you say, hopefully the jury will put that out of their minds and focus on the testimony they hear from both sides and be fair.
We have a question. Oh, we have an update from court. So the jury is entering. Combs' attorney, Anna Esteveo, says, Ms. Ventura, we're almost done here. Ventura responds, thank you. Esteveo asks, I will read Mr. Combs' messages. You're going to make a beautiful mother, God bless. So that's apparently what Combs had written Cassandra Ventura. Ventura responds, I said, thank you, God bless. Mina, what do you make of their exchanges, the loving exchanges between them? What do you think the value of that is?
I mean, there was love there, right? No one's denying that. And I think, as I said before, both things can be true, right? They could have loved each other, and this could have started very innocently. But obviously something went wrong where Cassie feels like she was victimized, and to the point where it's criminal. So both of those things can be true, and the prosecution has to prove um, what the facts are.
Have a question from Gossip Squirrel. If Diddy is convicted, what does prison look like for him? Will he get the celebrity treatment like house arrest? So before I throw that to you, Ben, when I talk about what prison could be for him, racketeering carries a maximum of life in prison. The is a sex trafficking. You're talking about a mandatory minimum sentence of 15 years in prison. Transportation for purposes of prostitution, that's a max sentence of 10 years in prison. So prison, if he's convicted, is a strong likelihood here. Talk to me, Ben, about what we could anticipate for a celebrity behind bars.
Wait, I don't know. It could cut either way. I mean, there might be people in the prison who admire him and might protect him, but it also could cut the other way. I think it would be a very grim situation in either scenario.
I don't know the answer to this one, Mina. This is Legs 7K. Do we know over the years if Cassie had hospital records to show any injuries to back her case? I knew there was something about medical records going into this case. Maybe our producers can check it out, but I don't think so. They would have been asked about it.
Yeah, from my knowledge, nothing was reported. And I think that's the big question that the defense really has to outline. Why? You know, why did you not report this? Now you can easily put an expert on the stand and explain why, right? Many people of abuse and sexual trafficking, they have a strange allegiance to the person who's hurting them. And it's like I said before, it's a psychology to it. So yeah, there's a reason why there are no medical records, but that's a valid point, and that's something that the
I,
defense really needs to hit home. If this horrible thing was happening to you on and off for 10 years, why didn't you document it properly?
I don't know if they're even necessarily fighting that this happened to her, Ben. I mean, there were photographs that were shown. We all saw the 2016 tape. Once you see the 2016 tape, you're like, I believe every instance when she says she was physically abused. They're just, I mean, the truth is, Ben, they're just recharacterizing what this abuse was.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, the video is so powerful. It establishes the abuse.
One thing I will say from Cassie's original lawsuit, it said Mr. Combs had Miss Ventura's personal medical records sent directly to his email address. For instance, when Miss Ventura began experiencing memory loss, potentially due to excessive drug use and or head injuries caused by Mr. Combs' beatings, as described below, her MRI results were provided directly to Mr. Combs. Mr. Combs also repeatedly arranged for his staff to drive Miss Ventura to certain doctor's appointments. That's pretty illuminating there, Amina.
I mean, that's the power that we're dealing with here. I mean, where are her HIPAA laws?
Right.
Because why is her MRI being delivered to someone that's not her? That's just insanity.
So we got a question here from Dr. N. Ben, does the defense get all the prosecution's evidence ahead of time? And can they change the list in the middle of the trial?
Well, certainly under Brady, they're going to get a lot of evidence. The defense is entitled to the evidence and will have it sufficiently in advance. And as I think we talked about earlier, there will be some witnesses who weren't on the list.
Well, I'll tell you, pre-trial, that was a ton of litigation between them. Ton of litigation where the defense kept saying, you know, they're first of all, Sean Combs was hit with superseding indictment after superseding indictment. They say the prosecution's trying to introduce new theories. They want to introduce all this new evidence. They aren't telling us who's going to be testifying in time. We can't properly prepare for trial. And yet all the time, I mean, it seemed to me the defense was spearheading, going straight ahead towards this trial. You know, that's a question too. I think that's a question too. It's very rare to see a federal criminal case go to trial in less than a year from arrest and indictment. But if he had made bail, I've always said he would have tried to push this criminal case as far down the road as possible. Him being locked up and being denied bail, I think he wanted to go to trial immediately, try to get, you know, acquitted and get out of there. That still seems to be what the game plan was, Mina.
Yeah, and that came across really in the reporting. Initially, it was like, okay, he wants to get this done fast. We want to make sure that we get this done and over with. But then there was a request for the 2-month delay. So I think as more attorneys got involved, especially after Brian Steele got involved, it was more so like, whoa, we need some time to prepare. We want to push back. And then the judge did not agree to that. But I said that before. I'm surprised at how fast this is moving. And I think because it is a high profile celebrity, the judge is very adamant from what I've seen about keeping this on track and making sure that this is tight and fair.
We have another update from court before we wrap things up. Cassandra Ventura apparently wrote Combs, "We should talk and have closure." And Ms. Esteveo, who's playing the part of Combs, said, Mr. Combs sent back a tear face emoji. He said, "You were always my ride or die." Ventura said, "I thought it was nice." Esteveo says, "You've been craving that." Ventura responds, "Before, I don't think I was craving now." So again, a lot of their dynamics in the relationship. Listen, I'm losing my voice. I've been talking so much. Mina Lona, Ben Shu, thank you both so much for coming on. I really, really appreciate your terrific insight, and it was great to see both of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jesse.
And congratulations on being a popular podcast.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
You deserve it. You've been doing it for a long time.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, it's really all due to the support of our incredible viewers. So, guys, thank you so much out there for watching us here on the live stream. Before we wrap things up, I just want to say we are planning to continue to do these live shows for you every day of this trial and try to cover this case for you as much as we can. And the reason we can do that, one of the other reasons,
All right, we are up
is
live
because
this
we have an incredible
afternoon. We've been live all morning, y'all, just covering everything, updates on everything.
sponsor,
Diddy right now,
incredible sponsor
right?
partner,
What did I
Morgan
just
and
do?
Morgan, America's largest
Hold
injury
on,
law
let me
firm.
get out
And
of
if you don't know who they are, this is a firm with over 1,000 attorneys. And you know why they have so many? Because they sponsor.
Okay.
Incredible
So,
sponsor partner,
while my
Morgan and
computer
Morgan,
doesn't want to
America's
mute.
largest.
Okay. I have got some tea in, sippers. I've got some tea in. Inner City Press has tweeted out on May 16, 2025, about the Sean Diddy Combs trial. Okay, so hot off the press. Combs, Estevao. Wasn't there a time he found out you were dancing with another person in the entertainment industry? Phone, right? Ventura. I don't remember Estevao. It was Chris Brown. Ventura. I was not dancing with him. Chris Brown has entered the group chat, they say. Okay, so Combs, Estevao. Mr. Combs spent a lot of money to make sure the video did not get released. Ventura, I don't know. Estevao, you had a conversation with Jonathan Odie that was transcribed. Ventura, I'm not sure. Estevao, he was volatile. Ventura, I didn't trust him. Okay. Combs, asked by Estevao, what did Mr. Combs say when you told him you thought Mr. Odie was recording? Ventura, he said he'd take care of it. Estevao, are you aware of an escort leaving comments on Mr. Combs' Instagram page? Ventura, I am not. Combs, Estevao. So this must be because they're putting Combs in front, so it must be his defense team. Okay. And you write back, we can embrace, laugh out loud. And you wanted to hug him, right? Ventura. That's what I said. Estevao, did you have actual intercourse with Mr. Combs that night? Ventura, I did. Estevao, during that, your now husband FaceTime you? Yes. Oh my. No tweets mention a traffic trial. Specifically, these are related to the ongoing trafficking and racketeering trial. Okay. Let me see. So on May 15th, for the Combs defense, Anna Maria Estevao cross-examined Ventura by positing that the hallway assault was triggered by bad MDMA. Oh my. Okay, let's go ahead and get right on over now to some more live updates coming from inside the last day of the first week. They are wrapping up the Diddy trial. Right? So, Diddy, fifth day, guys. How are you? I'm already exhausted by Diddy stuff. Okay. And we're only in the first week, the fifth day. Okay, started Monday. Jury was all selected last week. Now they're up this week. Already had Cassie on the stand like the second day. Okay. And all of it, girls and boys, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, while my computer's catching up. We got some takeaways from Cassie Ventura's testimony and Sean Diddy's trial. See what those are. Compliments of CNN. As soon as my computer catches up, like I said, I've been streaming live all day.
guys, today or so, taking care of my own personal affairs, right? So, my computer's catching up. So, thank you guys for sipping tea with me on the last day of the first week of the Diddy trial, right? Come on, computer. And lots of stuff has been going on. Cassie's testified over this week that, she was in love with Diddy. Diddy swept her off her feet by having their first kiss in the bathroom stall. Then he took her on a boat and they had sex. And, that's when she started to know she could be involved with Diddy. And wasn't nothing that I heard that was like, mine, well, like weeping her, sweeping her off of her feet, anything like, over captivatingly, experience that you think one would have with a billionaire, right? Not for nothing, such as what she spoke to on the stand. She's talked about how they've had moments with the escorts and things like that.
The prosecution's star witness taking the stand, but it was more than that.
Things have occurred and la da dee, la da 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 da, to where it gave her multiple mouth sores. We know those two.
It was how Cassie took that stand. You could hear a pin drop when those doors open.
She has testified to the fact that she has had
visibly pregnant Cassie Ventura walking past a man she had not seen in 6.5 years. A man she
a mouthful of herpes on a consistent, ongoing basis. Cassie endured and suffered from having lots of complications from the freak-offs, where she had mouth sores in her mouth, which we know what those are. Those are herpes. Also, where she spoke of where she consistently suffered from having urinary tract infections. And women, if you have had a urinary tract infection, you know that those are some of the worst painful things that you can experience. One equates it to, shooting fire from your private area when you urinate. That's what it feels like. It feels like glass trying to move through your urethra cavity to urinate. And Cassie has spoken to how she experienced those frequent moments during freak-offs in the actual event of her having a freak-off with Diddy. She would be under that type of feeling from suffering from mouth sores, known also as herpes in the mouth, and urinary tract infections. Okay, I'm pretty sure there were also bacterial infections and everything. Trimonis, I'm sure, was tricking around in the situation. So now we're going to listen to CNN give some live updates, takeaways from Cassie Ventura's testimony in the Sean Diddy Combs racketeering trial.
She says violently abused her for a decade. A man the prosecution said trafficked her. Well, she sat across from him, placed her overcoat behind her, turning her body slightly toward the jury, rubbing her pregnant belly throughout her testimony. Diddy, well, he was more fidgety than he was the day before. He was passing notes. He pushed himself away from the defense table and largely sat like that. They never seemed eye contact with one another, not even after she was crying about having loved him once and planning and participating in these freak-off sex parties because she feared him and she wanted to make him happy, but feeling worthless, feeling disgusting because she didn't want to do it. Now, with each moment, the testimony became more and more graphic. Her delivery, though, it never changed. It was, as a matter of fact, steady, calm. At times, she was even critical of herself, walking us all through how a 10-album record deal came over a 10-year period of abuse and sexual humiliation. And once you hear Cassie's testimony, you'll understand why the courtroom was so tense. She described the freak-offs in lurid detail. She testified about Diddy, who she called Sean, choreographing it all. And she explained a pattern of physical abuse that she could not escape. Cassie told the jury about one freak-off at a hotel where Diddy told her to get into an inflatable pool filled with warm baby oil. The prosecutor asked, what concerns did you have
This
about
is
not
so
getting into the
crazy.
pool with baby oil? Cassie responded,
That is so crazy, guys. I uploaded the post that I believe was submitted of the picture of the baby oil pool. It's crazy, guys. But it is that people think when their minds are drug filled, like they go out of the norm of what, you know, somebody may do in the moment of using drugs and freaking off, right? So, ooh, let's put the baby oil in the swimming pool. So,
quote, that, amongst other things, just his temper. If that is something that he wanted, Sean wanted to happen, that was going to happen. There wasn't another way around it. Now, Cassie claims that Diddy controlled everything about her life and his staff helped him do it. She also says all aspects of the freak-offs went through Diddy for approval, from how he directed her to finding escorts, at times from Craigslist, to her appearance and what she wore, and even what happened during the encounters with the other men. She testified,
let's think back
every
to
freak-off was like directed by Sean.
Backpage and Craigslist was a thing, right? To solicit sex on. People were being killed on Backpage and Craigslist from soliciting X on it, SCX on it. People were getting kidnapped. People were getting everything you could think of from soliciting SCX on Craigslist and Backpage, which is essentially how Backpage came to no longer have that area where you could go and solicit SCX on it, right? People were getting murdered from soliciting SCX on Backpage, right? So imagine you are Diddy with $1 billion reach of resourceful money that you can have at your disposal. And you are getting people from Craigslist and Backpage to sleep with you. So that goes to show you where Diddy's level of understanding of exactly who he was, you know, as a mogul, as a businessman, as a man that, you know, should have had more stature and poise. He was soliciting SCX from ex-workers on Craigslist and Backpage, y'all. That's just
like he knew specifically where he wanted everyone to be, the lighting and such. Cassie says the freak-offs made her feel disgusting. All kinds of drugs to numb herself and disassociate. And she testified Diddy frequently got physically abusive. One of those times was during a 2016 incident at a California hotel. This video. Cassie says she was in a freak-off with Diddy and an escort just a couple of days before her first big movie premiere. And she claims Diddy gave her a black eye, and all she could think about was getting out of there safely. So she ran out while Diddy was in the shower, she says. The prosecutor asked, quote, how many times had Sean thrown you to the ground like that before? Cassie responded, too many to count. I don't know. Cassie was also asked if there were occasions when she tried to fight back when he would hit her. She said, no. Cassie's testimony, it's far from over. She'll be back on that stand tomorrow. And her lawyer, though, says she's feeling good after today.
How do you feel after today?
It's not for me to decide how we feel. It's up to the jury. But we're very confident.
How's Cassie doing after it all? How is she feeling? I know it must have been a lot to kind of recount all the experiences.
It was a long day. I'm just super proud of her.
Let's start off with CNN's Kara Scannell, who has been covering this case from the very beginning, and she was in the courtroom today, virtually a front row seat. Kara, tell me, how did the testimony come in? How were these freak-offs orchestrated?
So Cassie kind of walked the jury through what her role was in the freak-offs and how she said that Combs had choreographed them. He was the director in charge. And what she described was that these freak-offs lasted from 36 to 72 hours. The longest one, she said, lasted 4 days. And through that period, she said her role had evolved from initially Combs setting up the first one to then it becoming essentially her job. These freak-offs, she said, were occurring weekly. And what she was responsible for was finding these escorts, using Craigslist, some of these other escort services, helping them travel to certain locations from Miami to Ibiza, to New York, to LA, to Las Vegas. And that she worked with Combs's business travel people in order to move people around, saying that they would project that they were potential employers and getting them to move. But she said that he had everything to do with what she was wearing. She said she would buy outfits from sex shops and see which one he wanted her to wear. And then inside the actual hotel rooms, their apartments where the freak-offs took place, she said that Combs was in charge of lighting. It began with candles. It then moved to studio lighting, that he was directing how they moved from each action of each sexual act in these freak-offs, and even the amount of baby oil that they were wearing. She said that he wanted them to be glistening, and so he would often encourage them to put on more baby oil. And then the drug use. Part of that testimony, she said, was that she had engaged and used numerous drugs, including ecstasy, GHB, ketamine, cocaine, marijuana. And the prosecution showed text messages where before a freak-off, she is texting Combs asking, which colored pill do I take from your Louis Vuitton med bag? And he directed her which one to take.
It was astonishing to have all of this come in and the tempo with which she spoke. The jury in this room leaning in at times to hear more information. She also described what she feared most about defying him.
Right. I mean, she walked through what the range of these fears were, from physical to just if she upset him, he would take away her phone, her car, limit her access to her apartment. Sometimes that was done by him, sometimes through members of his staff, some of his security team. She also was testifying that, these physical threats. One thing that stood out to me that she said was if she made the wrong face, the next thing I knew I was getting hit in the face. And she said he controlled almost every aspect of her life. He gave her essentially busy work, a to-do list, so he would know what she was doing at all times. If he couldn't reach her, he was incessantly texting her until someone went and checked to see where she was. She also said that he controlled her appearance. Sometimes he didn't like her hair. He wanted her to dress sexy, sometimes a tomboy. He wanted her nails to be white, she testified, especially during the freak-offs. And one thing that she said she was concerned about was blackmail, because a lot of these freak-offs were recorded, and the big concern was hers that they could end up in the internet if somehow she did something to upset him.
We're just a half day into this testimony. There's so much more. And the jury was shown that now infamous 2016 hotel surveillance video for now, a fifth or more time today? Why do you think the prosecution continues to show this video, sometimes stopping it and showing parts?
Yeah, they've been showing this at least 5 times by my account and going kind of moment by moment. And I think what they're trying to do here is they've charged Combs with sex trafficking, force and coercion. And part of that force is physical violence and the threat of physical violence. I mean, this is why Combs's lawyer has called this probably the most important piece of evidence in this whole trial, because that is how the prosecution will want to show the jury that there was violence, that it was real. You can't distinguish this. They're not denying this happened. What Combs' lawyers is trying to tell the jury, though, that this is not evidence of sex trafficking. It's evidence of domestic violence, which he owns, but they're saying it is a very different thing than what he's been charged with.
I want to start with you, Stacey, because her testimony, did it prove there was a criminal enterprise? That's what they got to prove for RICO.
Right. So I look at her testimony today as domestic violence on steroids. The prosecution is trying to show that there was coercion and that he used his business enterprise to engage in coercing women to fulfill his sexual desires. I think it's a little bit of a stretch. I understand there are all kinds of criminal activities being alleged here, but the racketeering and the sex trafficking charges, I'm not sure that Cassie made that out today.
It's
Now,
only
there may
day
be
2,
more.
though,
It's
right?
only day 2.
I mean, and you're looking
And
at
they're
this,
trying
Misty,
for it.
it's day 2.
Yeah.
So the jury, and this is, by the way, an 8 to 10 week trial.
Yeah.
They have a lot to show, but they called her almost first she's getting ready to give birth probably in a matter of weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, she's the most critical witness, and there's a reason for that because, yes, the case is not made yet, but she's laid the foundation for establishing those charges for the prosecution, and here's how. With respect to sex trafficking, we heard about the power dynamic, that he was always in control. We heard about stomping, kicking, hitting, all of these physical acts to get her to comply, psychological abuse, blackmail. That's where we get our force, fraud, and coercion. And as far as RICO, she kind of put the O in organization in RICO by naming individuals who were in his sphere and were doing his bidding and talking about what would be the predicate underlying crimes.
But more
drugs,
than that,
guns,
they
prostitution.
showed the pictures. They actually tried to put a face to what they were calling the enterprise. Remember in the opening statements, they were saying it was the inner circle, the bodyguards, trusted assistants. They actually went through and showed pictures to the jury today of various bodyguards trying, I guess we were talking about, to establish the enterprise. But then there was this moment, Jeremy, where she actually said on the stand, eventually it became a job for me. She's talking about planning these freak-offs. Eventually it became a job for me to where I knew that if that is something he wanted to do, I had the contacts to set it up and get a hotel room and all of that. And sometimes she'd even give deposits on her own personal credit card. So is she part of the enterprise or the victim of it?
Well, the defense is going to try to make her out to be part of this. She's not a victim. She's there willfully. She's getting this 10 contract or 10 record deal. This is what she's doing. And the prosecution in return is going to say, you know, you can white knuckle someone's neck with control. You can white knuckle their soul with control. And that's the control he had over her at all times.
All right. We are chiming in. Let me get on over here to see.
Cassie Ventura on the witness stand for a fourth day in the federal criminal trial against hip-hop mogul Sean Diddy Combs. The defense continuing cross-examination this morning, confronting her with dozens of her own messages, many explicit, hoping to convince the jury she was an eager sexual partner who matched Combs' desires. I'm always ready to
take that stand. On Monday, the defense want to keep her on the stand in the weekend. Like, God, dog. Didn't y'all hear them say the girl is Friday?
freak off, one message said. Ventura testified that she had no free will in their relationship and that when she tried to...
My goodness gracious. Okay. We're going to get some more tea from CNN real quick, y'all. Defense question, Cassie. Let's sip this tea. Thank you guys for sipping tea with me. I'm more than new. Okay. Let's enlarge that screen so we can see all of it in its totality. Okay.
Focusing back now on our breaking coverage of Diddy Combs' racketeering and sex trafficking trial in New York. Right now, the prosecution's star witness, Cassie Ventura, is back on the stand under cross-examination. And moments ago, the judge just weighed in on timing, telling the defense that they have until tomorrow's lunch break to continue questioning her. That any after that would be up to his discretion.
Combs' defense has been trying to challenge roughly 9 hours of direct testimony that Ventura has already given. She has told jurors that Combs allegedly abused her. And she said that over their 11-year relationship, she felt threatened at times to perform sexual acts with him. With us now is Attorney Affairs commentator Ariva Martin. Ariva, what is your reaction to how the defense is approaching this so far?
So, Brianna, we expected this. We know from the opening statement from the defense, a big part of their case is trying to get this jury to believe that Cassie Ventura was a consenting adult in these sexual acts, these freak-offs that we've heard so much about during her direct testimony. So a lot of what the defense has been doing today during this cross-examination is showing text messages and getting Cassie Ventura to acknowledge that, according to these text messages, she was a willing participant in some of these freak-offs. But one of the things that we haven't done or haven't heard yet, Brianna, is the connection between those text messages in the early stages of the relationship and the violence that we heard so much about during the direct testimony yesterday. And I think when the prosecution gets to redirect, we're going to see them try to link the violence that happened later in the relationship to her participation and make the argument still that she was being coerced into these commercial sex acts with escorts, despite how she may have felt about Sean Diddy Combs in the beginning of their relationship.
And Ariva, what do you make of the judge here weighing in on the timing? Because the defense, as our recent reporting indicated, had wanted to go at least through the end of tomorrow evening. I wonder if you think the judge is going to press for them to things up here, and that might affect their strategy.
Absolutely, Boris. The judge has said from the beginning of this trial that it was going to be an efficient trial, and he was going to do his best to keep it around 6 to 8 weeks. He has said he'll give the defense until tomorrow afternoon with their cross-examination, and any time after that will be at his discretion. Oftentimes, these examinations, Boris, start to become repetitive, and the judge is going to assess whether tomorrow afternoon, if he believes the questioning is indeed repetitive, if he believes enough information, the defense has been given ample time to make their case. So it's always that balance between giving each party, each side, an opportunity to make their case, but at the same time, keeping the trial moving so that jurors, that's the big issue here, is keeping these jurors engaged.
For what reason would the judge grant going beyond lunchtime tomorrow?
I think, Brianna, if he believes the defense has new material, if there are questions that have not been asked before today or tomorrow morning, if the judge believes that the defense makes a credible argument as to why they need more time. Judges are often persuaded by arguments from the lawyers that there's a particular area of questioning that they want to go into that they haven't gone into before, and that is essential to them making their case.
And when it comes to some of these text messages exchanged between the two of them, Ariva, I wonder what you make of them highlighting moments where there was some emotion exchange between the two of them. Cassie talking about how much she loved Combs, that she wanted more time with him, more intimacy together, and Combs apparently at times reciprocating that.
Well, we know from Cassie's testimony yesterday that she said she was in love with him, that she had really strong feelings for him. And a big part of what the defense, again, is trying to make the case for is that these text messages are evidence of a couple that were in love, that chose to bring third parties into their sexual relationship, and that at all times Cassie was a willing participant. But again, trials are marathons. So good day for the prosecution yesterday. Some may say a good day for the defense so far today, because they are establishing that at least in the early stages of the relationship, there appears to have been some form of consent. But we still haven't gotten to that point where we know that Cassie was saying to Sean Diddy Combs, I no longer want to participate in these freak-offs, that I'm threatened, I'm concerned about blackmail, I'm concerned about physical violence if I refuse to participate in them. And these issues of consent, Boris, are very complicated sometimes. Obviously, someone can consent to something at one point in time, and they can withdraw that consent at a later point in time. So I think we're going to see that concept played out during redirect by the prosecution.
I want to get to some of the latest details that we've gotten from the courtroom, specifically some of the text messages that have been exchanged between Cassie Ventura and Combs, and specifically the defense asking Cassie Ventura about a conversation in March 2017 when Ventura told Combs to essentially stop playing the victim, saying that she loves freak-offs when we both want them. And then she was asked about that text message. She said, I would say that loving freak-offs were just words at that point. Dave, I wonder what you make of the defense going through these text messages, trying to paint a picture of cohesiveness and even agreement over these sexual encounters that the prosecution is saying were coerced.
I definitely think the defense has won some points, because although the prosecution tried to take the sting out of some of this by showing that she may have texted Diddy that she liked Freakoffs, but at some point this was force, fraud, or coercion, that it was against her will, and she was just trying to please a man she loved, an unrequited love. But still, jurors are human beings, and when they see this, they're going to cast some doubts, have some doubts in their minds over whether this was consensual. Now, the prosecution gets a chance to rehabilitate the witness later, and that's when Cassie can say, you know, I said what I said, but you can see by my actions, by his actions, that this wasn't consensual. I mean, he beat me up. He forced me to do things against my will. Even if I was into it at the beginning just to please him, it doesn't mean that I consented the whole way through. But, you know, jurors are going to come at this from their own life experiences with freak-offs or something foreign, unique, weird. And if they think that Cassie at some point was part of it willingly, yeah, that's going to be really bad for the prosecution.
Richard, when she says that I love our freak-offs when we both want it, I mean, when we both want it, inherent in that is that sometimes she didn't. And I wonder what the jury might think about that.
Well, I think what the defense is really trying to do right now is to establish Cassie as her own agency. In other words, all of this really leads up to them establishing she is independent. She's making her own decisions. She's communicating with.
Thanks for watching. Remember to show your support by liking, subscribing, and sharing. It's a blessing. Keep your teacups filled and ready for my next upload. Until then, stay inspired and remember, always stay sifted.